7 days. That's all that was standing between me and what I thought was my happily ever after. 7 days until I'd walk down the aisle to marry Michael, the man I'd loved since college. But you know what they say, the closer you get to the altar, the clearer you see the devil in your partner. I came home early from my bachelorette party to find my fiancé and my maid of honor in our bed. And honey, they weren't practicing their vows. But the real story isn't about my broken heart. It's about what I did next. But this isn't a story about a broken-hearted girl crying into her passport. This is about what happens when you take your power back. It's about tropical storms, mysterious strangers, and a twist of fate so delicious, it'll have my cheating ex and his new wife begging for mercy. Because the man I fell for during my honeymoon. Yes, you heard that right. My honeymoon. He held a secret that would destroy their greedy little plans forever. So grab your tissues and your popcorn, bobbies, because karma is the best wedding planner there is. Dear friend, before I continue, let me give you a background to this story and remind you that if you like interesting stories like these, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any interesting story. My name is Chloe Mitchell. I am a successful interior designer, the owner of a gorgeous downtown loft, and engaged to Michael Stevens, the golden boy of the tech world. We had the kind of relationship people wrote books about, college sweethearts who made it, 8 years together. The wedding was going to be the event of the season. I'm talking custom Vera Wang, 12 bridesmaids, a 5-tier cake, the whole fairy tale. My bachelorette party was in Vegas. My best friend Sarah, the one I'd known since we were in diapers, the one I'd chosen as my maid of honor, had planned everything. But let me tell you something about Vegas. What happens there might stay there, but food poisoning, that comes home with you. By the second night, I was so sick I couldn't keep water down. The girls wanted to stay, but I knew my body. I changed my flight, took the first plane home, and thought I'd surprise Michael. I imagined him doting on me, bringing me ginger ale, and us laughing about how I couldn't even handle 2 days in Vegas. The first sign something was wrong should have been the Uber receipt from the airport in our shared email account. A late-night ride to a fancy hotel downtown. But I was so focused on getting home to my bed, I didn't think twice. The second sign was the unfamiliar lace thong on the floor when I got home. Red. I don't wear red. The third sign. Well, the third sign was the sound coming from our bedroom. Our custom-made, king-sized bed that I had specifically designed for our master suite. I pushed the door open, and time stopped. There they were. Michael, my fiancé, the man who had cried while writing his vows. And Sarah, my sister from another mister, the woman who was supposed to hold my bouquet at the altar. They weren't just kissing. They were intertwined in our bed, on the sheets I'd picked out. The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was this guttural, wounded animal noise. Michael scrambled up, pulling the sheets around him. "Chloe, what are you doing home?" Sarah started sobbing immediately. "It's not what it looks like, we were just talking and—" "Talking," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "With your clothes off, in my bed." The excuses started flowing like cheap wine. "It just happened. We've been fighting so much lately. We never meant to hurt you." The classic hits, dear friend. They never chain. But here's the part that really gutted me. Michael, instead of begging for forgiveness, got defensive. "You've been so focused on the wedding, Chloe. You've been impossible to talk to. Sarah understands me." Sarah understood him so well, in fact, that she'd been understanding him for 6 months. 6 months. While she was helping me choose china patterns and wedding colors, she was sleeping with my fiancé. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I went cold. Ice cold. I looked at Michael, at the man I'd built my entire adult life around, and I saw a stranger. "Get out," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Both of you, take your things and get out of my house." The wedding cancellations were a special kind of hell. Telling my parents, explaining to relatives, the pitying looks, the whispered conversations. Michael had the audacity to fight me on the honeymoon tickets. "That's a joint asset, Chloe. We paid for that together." "Consider it emotional damages," I told him coldly. "Or I can take you to court for your half of the wedding deposits. Your choice." He backed down. Of course he did. Everyone expected me to collapse, to become this weeping, broken thing. My mother brought over casseroles and worried I wasn't eating. My friends tiptoed around me like I was made of glass. But something had snapped in me that day. I was done being the victim. I was done letting them win. So I did the one thing nobody expected. I packed my bags. I bought a devastatingly beautiful black bikini, and I got on that plane to Bali alone. The first few days were brutal. I stayed in my private villa with its infinity pool and stunning ocean view, and I cried. I cried for the future I'd lost. I cried for the friendship I'd treasured. I cried until I had no tears left. But on the fourth day, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were puffy, my skin was pale, and I looked pathetic. No, I said to my reflection, no more. I put on a killer red sundress, did my makeup, and went down to the resort's famous cliffside bar. I ordered a cocktail called a Bali Sunset and planted myself at the bar, determined to at least enjoy the view I'd paid for. That's when the sky opened up. Not a gentle rain, but a torrential, tropical downpour that had everyone scrambling for cover. But I stayed right where I was. What was a little rain compared to what I'd just been through? And that's when he walked in. Soaked to the bone, dark hair plastered to his forehead, but with this calm, unbothered energy. He shook the water from his hair like a golden retriever and slid onto the stool next to me. "Rough weather," he commented, his voice a warm rumble. "Rough life," I countered, taking a sip of my drink. He laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. "That bad?" And for some reason, I told him the whole pathetic story. The wedding, the betrayal, the humiliating discovery. I figured I'd never see him again, so what did it matter? He listened, really listened. No pity, no awkward platitudes. When I finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "Anyone who would cheat with your best friend a week before the wedding wasn't just making a mistake," he said. "He was showing you who he really is. You didn't lose your soulmate, Chloe. You dodged a bullet." It was the first thing anyone had said that didn't make me want to scream. His name was Alex, he said. He was traveling between projects. There was a mystery about him, but it felt intriguing, not dangerous. He asked me about my work, my passions, what I wanted from life, questions Michael hadn't asked me in years. We talked for hours as the storm raged around us. When the rain finally eased to a drizzle, he walked me back to my villa. "I'm here for a couple weeks," he said at my door. "If you get tired of drinking alone." I went inside with a real smile on my face for the first time in weeks. The stone in my chest felt a little lighter. The next morning, I woke up actually looking forward to the day. I put on my new bikini, slathered on sunscreen, and went down to the beach. And who did I find reading a book under the exact same palapa I was heading for? Alex. He looked up and smiled. "Fancy meeting you here." We spent the day together. It was easy, natural. We swam in the turquoise water, we explored the local markets, we ate fresh mango from a street vendor. He told me he was an artist of sorts, though he was vague about the details. He carried a sketchbook everywhere, filled with incredible drawings of everything from landscapes to intricate patterns. Over the next week, we fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the beach, afternoons exploring, evenings watching the sunset with cocktails in hand. He was nothing like Michael. Where Michael was loud and needed to be the center of attention, Alex was quiet and observant. Where Michael was always checking his phone for business emails, Alex was fully present. One afternoon, we rented a scooter and drove up into the mountains to find a hidden waterfall. The road was treacherous, all sharp turns and steep drops. I was clinging to his back, my eyes squeezed shut. "Trust me," he called over his shoulder. "I won't let you fall." And I realized I did trust him, completely. When we finally reached the waterfall, it took my breath away. A curtain of white water cascading into an emerald pool, surrounded by lush jungle. We were the only people there. We swam in the cool, clear water, and when we came out, shivering and laughing, he took my face in his hands. "I know it's fast," he said, his eyes serious. "And I know you're healing, but I haven't been able to think about anything but you since that night in the rain." And then he kissed me. And dear friend, let me tell you, it wasn't a rebound kiss. It was the kind of kiss that rewires your soul. The kind that makes you forget every other kiss that came before it. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We held hands like teenagers. We stayed up all night talking. We danced on the beach under the stars. He made me feel seen, cherished, and desired in a way Michael never had. The night before we were both supposed to fly home, reality started to creep back in. We were lying on a daybed by the ocean, listening to the waves. "What happens when we go back?" I asked, my head on his chest. "Whatever we want to happen," he said, playing with my hair. "This doesn't have to end just because vacation is over." We exchanged numbers. He promised to call as soon as he was back in the States. I tried not to get my hopes up, but it was hard. What we had felt too real to be just a vacation fling. The flight home was bittersweet. I was leaving paradise and this magical connection and returning to the mess of my old life. The mess of explaining to everyone why I wasn't married. The mess of seeing Michael's stuff still scattered around my apartment. The first thing I did when I walked in my door was box up every reminder of him. The photos, the toothbrush he'd left, the ugly vase his mother had given us. It all went into storage. I was reclaiming my space. Then I saw the stack of mail from Michael's lawyer. He was still fighting me for his half of the honeymoon money. The audacity. But then my phone buzzed. It was Alex. "Made it home. My bed feels too empty without you. Dinner tomorrow. Eh." I smiled so wide my face hurt. Maybe going home wouldn't be so bad after all. The next day, I was meeting my sister for lunch to tell her all about Alex when my phone started blowing up. Texts from old college friends, links to news articles. "Chloe," my sister said, her eyes huge. "You need to see this." She showed me her phone. The headline made my blood run cold. "Tech Wunderkind Michael STEVENS in heated battle for Harrison Billions." There was a picture of Michael and Sarah, looking disgustingly happy, standing outside a courthouse. The article said Michael was the long-lost grandson of shipping billionaire Silas Harrison and was fighting other heirs for his rightful inheritance. The Harrison fortune was legendary. We're talking private islands, art collections, the works, and Michael thought he was about to get it all. Everything clicked into place. The sudden confidence, the quick marriage to Sarah. They'd apparently eloped while I was in Bali. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a gold digger who thought he'd hit the jackpot. But as I kept reading, a name in the legal documents made my heart stop. The name of the other main claimant, the one contesting Michael's story. Alexander Harrison. Alex. My Alex. The man who'd held me as I cried about my broken engagement was Alexander Harrison, the real heir, and my slimeball ex was trying to steal his inheritance. I stared at the formal photo of Alex in the article. It was him, but different. In a tailored suit, clean-shaven, looking every inch the powerful billionaire heir, not the relaxed artist I'd fallen for in Bali. My phone rang. It was Alex. "Chloe," he said, his voice tense. "We need to talk. There's something I need to tell you about who I am." "I know," I whispered, my world tilting on its axis again. "I just saw the news." "Dear friend, let me tell you, finding out the man you're falling for is a billionaire heir is one thing. Finding out your garbage ex is trying to steal his money. That's the kind of plot twist that makes life worth living. Dear friend, what would you do if it was you?" I agreed to meet Alex that evening. He showed up at my door looking like the man from the newspaper photos, serious, powerful, a world away from the man who taught me to ride a scooter in Bali. "Chloe," he began, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I need to explain." And he did. The whole story came pouring out. He was Silas Harrison's grandson, yes, but he'd never cared about the money or the empire. He and his grandfather had been estranged for years after a huge family fight. When Silas died, Alex had been traveling, trying to decide if he even wanted to be part of the messy legal battle. "That's why I was in Bali," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I was trying to figure out if I should fight for this inheritance or let it go. And then I met you, and you were so genuine. You were dealing with real pain, and you were so brave about it. I didn't tell you who I was because for the first time in months, I got to just be Alex, not Alexander Harrison, heir to a fortune and a mountain of family drama. He explained that Michael's claim was based on forged documents and a very distant, very shaky branch of the family tree. Michael's grandmother was a Harrison, but she'd been written out of the will decades ago for good reason. Michael, smelling an opportunity, had hired a shady genealogist to build his case. And then I found out who he was to you, Alex said, his eyes darkening. That he was the man who broke your heart, and that he's now trying to steal what's rightfully mine. It made the decision to fight very, very easy. A beautiful, perfect, revenge-filled plan began to form in my mind. Let me help you, I said. Alex looked surprised. Chloe, you don't have to get involved in this mess. Oh, but I want to, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I know Michael, I know how he thinks, how he operates, and I have the one thing you need. What's that? Evidence. While cleaning out my apartment after the breakup, I'd found Michael's old laptop. He'd left it behind in his haste to move in with Sarah. I'd been meaning to give it back, but now I was glad I hadn't. I remembered that Michael was notoriously bad with passwords. He used the same one for everything, our original wedding date. It took me less than an hour to break in, and what I found was a treasure trove of deceit. Emails between Michael and the shady genealogist discussing which documents to forge. Text message backups where he bragged to Sarah about fooling the old man's lawyers and how they'd be set for life. He'd even scanned copies of the fake birth certificate they'd created. I handed it all over to Alex and his legal team. His lead attorney grinned like a shark who just smelled blood. This, he said, is case ending. The final court hearing was everything I could have dreamed of and more. Michael and Sarah arrived, dressed in expensive new clothes they'd clearly bought in anticipation of their inheritance, looking smug and superior. They shot condescending looks at Alex. And then they saw me, sitting right there beside him in the front row, my hand tucked confidently in his. The color drained from Michael's face. Sarah looked like she'd seen a ghost. The hearing began. Michael's lawyer presented his flimsy case with dramatic flair. Then Alex's lawyer stood up. He presented the evidence I'd found. He showed the judge the emails, the texts, the forged documents. With each piece of evidence, Michael slouched lower in his seat. Sarah started crying, not pretty tears, but ugly, panicked sobs. The judge didn't even need to recess. He threw Michael's case out of court and referred him to the district attorney for fraud and forgery. He also ordered Michael to pay all of Alex's legal fees. After the gavel fell, we walked out of the courthouse into a swarm of reporters. Michael and Sarah tried to slink away, but a reporter shoved a microphone in Michael's face. Mr. Stevens, any comment on the fraud charges? Michael, humiliated and furious, snapped. He pointed at me, his face twisted with rage. This is her fault. She's just a bitter, jealous woman who can't stand to see me happy and successful. Before I could even respond, Alex stepped forward, putting a protective arm around me. Jealous, Alex said, his voice calm but carrying across the crowd. He looked at me, his eyes full of so much love it made my knees weak. Why would she be jealous of a fraud and a cheat when she's about to become my wife? And right there, on the courthouse steps with cameras flashing all around us, he got down on one knee. Chloe Mitchell, he said, pulling a simple, elegant diamond ring from his pocket. You are the strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You saw me for who I am, not what I have. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down my face, happy tears, healing tears, triumphant tears. Yes, I said, pulling him up to kiss me. 1,000 times yes. The reporters went wild. It was the perfect, most delicious revenge I could have ever imagined. We got married 6 months later on that same beach in Bali, at the exact resort where we'd met. It was small, intimate, and perfect, just close friends and family. And as for Michael and Sarah, the fraud charges stuck. Michael did 18 months in a white-collar prison, and they're both now living in his mother's basement, deeply in debt from legal fees and completely disgraced. The moral of the story, dear friend, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when life gives you lemons, Don't just make lemonade, go on your honeymoon alone, and find yourself a billionaire who loves you for you. Because karma doesn't just come knocking, dear friends. Sometimes she brings the perfect man with her.